Hi everyone, welcome back to another video on the M1 Mac Mini. So I've had the Mac Mini for almost a month, or I'll say more than a month, and I thought this is a good time to go over my experience, talk about some of the good things, some of the bad things. So I'll talk about five good things and five bad things. I'll start with the bad ones first because if you're having the same issue or if you're concerned about them, then you would want to know them first. The good things anyway are good. People normally don't worry too much about it. So let's get started. So in terms of what I didn't like on the M1 Mac Mini, the first and foremost is the Bluetooth problems that I'm having. And I have read that many other people have the same Bluetooth problems. I use a Bluetooth mouse and that keeps getting disconnected quite frequently. So if you're doing something, let's say photo editing or video editing, and if you're about to do some pull or drag operation, the mouse suddenly would get disconnected for a few seconds and then it would come back on in the next 5 or 10 seconds. This doesn't happen that frequently, but it is annoying because if you're doing something important and if you suddenly lose mouse control, then obviously you lose track of what you are doing and then you have to wait for 5 or 10 seconds for it to come back. The other option is you just switch off the mouse and turn it back on, and then it should get working. But that is an unnecessary hassle that I think is one of the biggest problems that the new M1 Mac Mini has. I've heard it might be there on the other two M1 devices, the M1 MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro, but I only have the Mac Mini. So the second one is it's actually not a drawback or a concern, but because Apple does say that basically it has got connectivity to two monitors, whereas the laptop versions don't have two monitor connectivity. It can connect to only one monitor. Now, the thing that I noticed is it connects to monitors which have got direct HDMI or USB-C connections. Now, I use a 1080p monitor. I use two monitors, in fact, and both of them have got DVI and VGA connectivity. And although I'm using a DVI to HDMI cable, but somehow the Mini does not recognize the monitor, and I keep getting a display error on the monitor screen. So what I did was I have a USB-C dock which has got HDMI connection. So I plugged in the HDMI end of the monitor cable into the dock, and the dock connects to the Mac Mini via a USB-C cable. So that is how I'm able to make it work for now at least. But then again, if you don't have a dock, then that could be a problem because DVI to DVI to USB-C or HDMI cables somehow are not being accepted by the Mac Mini. The other option is you buy a dock which has got display link technologies. So I also have a pluggable dock which has got display link, and that is how I am using the other monitor. So if I try to connect one monitor with a DVI to VGA, sorry, if I try to connect one DVI to HDMI connection, then that doesn't work on the Mac Mini, although it has got a HDMI port in there. So that's a bit of a hassle. I am able to work around it, but if I just had the Mac Mini and I was without the two docking stations, then I would have to buy them separately, adding to the cost of the Mac Mini purchase. That's something that I thought I should bring it up because many of you might not be having extra USB-C docking stations or extra display link docking stations. Now, I know some people have tried to connect six monitors also, and that works probably if you're using display link technology docking stations. So there are those which show how to connect them. But basically, what they are doing is daisy chaining uh, each of the monitors via the docking station. So by daisy chaining, I mean they connect one dock to another and then so on. And then in the end, only one cable connects to the Mac Mini or the MacBook Pros. Okay, so moving on to the third one, it's more of a concern that I have, although I haven't faced an issue so far. So the Mac Mini I have is an 8 GB one with 256 GB SSD, and while the Mini is very good in terms of performance, so what it does is it tries to swap out applications which are in memory, as in when there is an additional need for free RAM. So it swaps out the application onto the disk. Now, what it does is it basically writes to the disk, and because Apple is using very high speed disks capable of writing like 2000 Mbps, that's how it is able to show the performance without degrading or slowing down the applications. So the concern that I have is writing to the swap means every second or every minute it is writing a lot of data to the swap storage. And if I just try to show you the activity monitor right now, so let me pull up activity monitor. I just minimize this. Okay, so here is my activity monitor. Now, if you see here, it is using about 1.5 GB as swap memory, so which means it has written out about 1 GB of application into the swap. My physical memory is still 8 GB. I'm using 6.27 GB of actual memory, and then I have some cache files, and then you have app memory, wired memory, and compressed memory. So although Apple is using a lot of optimization here, I am still concerned that writing very large applications to swap might eventually have an impact on the SSD. Now, that's not to say that Apple SSDs are weak or they don't last for a long time. So what I noticed was in this 1 month of using this Mac Mini, I used an application called Drive DX. I used the trial version, and I noticed I had written about zero point 0.5 terabyte onto the disk. So this includes whatever video editing I'm doing, whatever software I'm installing, and whatever the system is doing in terms of reading and writing onto the disk. So the reads were about 1 terabyte, and the writes to the disk, the physical writes were about half a terabyte. So if you look at the number, it's quite huge. But then most SSDs, let's take an example of the Samsung SSD. So many of the SSDs have got about 100, 200 terabytes of life. So you can write those many terabytes without losing performance. So if I just take a half terabyte a month, then in a year I'll be using 6 terabytes. And then if I have to reach about 100 terabytes, then I'll probably need 5 or 6 years or even more than that. So in 5 years, I'll be using just 72 terabytes. So that's way below the overall lifespan of the SSD. But in the end, I haven't seen that happening with Intel-based systems, at least the Windows-based systems. So whatever you are trying to do, if you're using a heavy application which uses too much memory, then it is going to swap out other applications with your SSD. And just as an example, if I just start Resolve, which is an application that consumes a good amount of memory. So let me try to bring it up, and it should come up on the process monitor here. So here it is. Resolve is using about 1 GB. So now the memory used is about 6 GB, which is the physical memory. Now let me try opening a new project. So this is just a new project. I will minimize this. Okay, so now I haven't uh, seen a change here because it was already using 1.15 GB of swap. The physical memory is still 8 GB, and then in terms of performance, it might still work smoothly. But as I start using Resolve for multiple things, it is going to increase the swap memory. Now, if I bring up Safari, so let's say I open a few more tabs. So here I'm opening some of the tabs, and okay, so it hasn't done anything major, but I have definitely seen it using 4 or 5 GB of swap, and probably because I'm not doing anything in Resolve, that's why it is not touching. But memory used has gone to 6.21, and the moment I start using Resolve, doing some editing or adding some effects, this is going to go up. It will start caching all the unused applications and then move some of them onto the swap. So if you see here, so it's not changing at least right now, which is fine. But anyway, performance-wise, you would not see any impact. But in the long run, this could be a concern for many people who are storing critical work on their hard drives, and it is better you save all your critical data onto an external drive rather than having it on the Mac Mini SSD and try to back up regularly. Okay, so I spoke about three. The fourth one is it's more of a concern again. Some of the applications are not having the M1 specific version, and you have to use them via Rosetta. And in some cases, the software developers have rolled out a beta version now. Some of the betas are not completely stable. So if I take the example of DaVinci Resolve, it does occasionally get stuck and it does crash like 3 or 4 times out of 10, which is not a big problem. I know they would be rolling out a full-fledged release instead of just having beta versions. So probably after a year or so, I may not have this concern, but something that you should be aware of right now because the software ecosystem is still evolving. Developers have not moved on to the Apple Silicon specific updates to their software. So compatibility issues are going to stay at least in the initial 6 months or 12 months. Okay, so the last one is more about portability. Now, if you are using your Mac just as a desktop replacement, that's fine. You have a fixed setup. You don't need to move around. But then you definitely have to invest in certain additional accessories for your uh, usage, which is like a monitor, keyboard, some USB dongles. Now, Mac Mini does come with some basic ports, and I'll be talking about the good things on the Mac Mini in just a moment. But sometimes you might feel that the number of ports given on the Mac Mini is not enough, and that which means you have to invest in additional accessories. So just something that you know before making the purchase. If you are using it as a desktop replacement, you are perfectly fine. But end of the day, if you want to move around, then you can't really move around because it does not come with the entire setup. So you definitely have to spend time in moving the system around, moving all your monitors, cables, and having a power supply nearby. So not the I won't say people would buy for the sake of portability. For that, you have the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro. Uh, the other good thing that I'm going to talk about is Sidecar, which I'll come to later on. So as of now, these are the top five issues that I have faced. Now let's move on to the good part. The good part, I'll start off with performance. Now, the M1 processor is an 8 core processor. It has got 8 core GPU. So the performance is, I'll say, blazing fast. All the applications open very quickly. There's no lag. From the moment you click on the application, it comes up. If I compare that with my Windows system, if I open Resolve, it takes at least about a minute to open. Whereas in case of the Mac Mini, it opens up instantly, just 5 or 10 seconds, and the application is ready to go. So the performance is definitely good. Now, obviously, an 8 core system would outperform a Windows system, which I have, which only is a quad core one. But the overall architecture and the way the apps are written, and they use all the Apple specific features and functionalities to the best of what the developer can write. So it is very optimized, and that's why you see all that performance. The second good thing is RAM management. Now, I have been using this 8 GB base model for doing video editing. I don't do 4K or 8K videos, but I definitely know that people have tried out doing that on the base model. And the base model performs even better than the Windows and the previous Mac lineup, which has got a 8 core i9 processor with 32 GB RAM or even 64 GB RAM. So the RAM management is quite good. Apple does, as I mentioned earlier, the concern that I had is about the swap memory. So whenever an application requires additional RAM, what the OS is doing is it is swapping out the unused applications onto the disk and making more memory available. Now, in case you are using an application that probably requires 16 GB RAM as a full-fledged allocation, then I don't know if that would work or not. But most applications like Resolve, iMovie, Final Cut Pro, all these work without any issues. In fact, um, I have tried to export a movie from iMovie, or rather a video editing done in iMovie, and while the export is running, I have been able to use uh, browse through websites also without any issues. So it is very difficult to overload the system because of the good memory management. Now, if you search online, you might see people who have tried to max out the memory utilization, and probably they have 12 to 15 applications open and then about 30, 40 browser tabs and doing a couple of other things in the background. So that is kind of the limit that you have to cross in order to slow down the system. And in regular usage, I don't think anyone would do these many things in parallel. If you are that big of a power user, then I would suggest not using the base model, going for the 16 GB RAM model and increase the SSD storage as well if you have too many applications. Okay, so the third good thing on the M1 Mac Mini is now I did say that you have to buy accessories, which is kind of a drawback. But then if you compare the Mac Mini with MacBook Air and MacBook Pro, the 13-inch one, which have got the M1 processor, it comes with the most options of ports. So apart from physical LAN cable, it comes with two USB-C ports, two USB-A ports, and then one HDMI port. So from a comparison perspective, I think this Mac Mini definitely has got more ports. If you have direct USB-C monitors, you can connect them via USB-C. If you have a HDMI connection, a direct HDMI connection on your monitor, you can connect another monitor and still have two USB-A ports to connect all your older accessories which require USB-A or USB 3 connection. So from that point of view, this is definitely more versatile. Although it does come with a drawback that you cannot move it around that freely. But end of the day, if you have like a fixed desk setup, then the combination of port definitely works well. Okay, so the fourth one is about value. If you look at the overall cost and the features that you are getting, I think the Mac Mini with the M1 processor is definitely value for money. Why I say this is because the entry level model can do most of the things that you want to do. It includes a little more than basic video editing. It can run most of your applications, and if some of your applications are not yet ported, it does run those applications through Rosetta, which is like a translation software. So you don't have to worry about translating or making the application work, and the performance is as good as what you would have got previously. And in terms of the cost, I think the entry level base model costs only about 699 or $669 USD in some cases. You have offers and discounts running on most sites. So from that perspective, getting into the Mac OS or Mac ecosystem is very cost effective if you just go in for the base model. Now you do have to invest in additional things like the monitor, keyboard, mouse. But end of the day, if you are someone who wants to try out the Mac or Mac OS ecosystem, this is definitely a inexpensive way of getting into the Apple ecosystem. And couple that with the number of ports that you have, you don't need those many accessories as you might need on the new MacBook Air or the MacBook Pro, which has got only two USB-C ports, and everything else has to run off only these two USB ports, which includes charging. So the Mac Mini has got its own power port, so it does not require, it doesn't have a battery, so it does not require power via USB-C. It has a separate power cable. So from that perspective, it is definitely value for money. And if you combine that with the amount of heavy lifting it can do, I think it is definitely a worthwhile competitor to most desktops and even the Mac Pro and the earlier version of Mini and all the desktop systems you have. Okay, so the fifth one is something that I haven't used as such, but I have seen many videos where people are trying to make the Mac Mini more of a portable one. Now, what I mean by portable is if, let's say, you have the Mac Mini configured or placed on a desk in a different room and you also have an iPad, then you can use the same user ID which you use for your Mac Mini on the iPad. So that is a basic requirement. You need to use the same user IDs, and then Apple has got an option of mirroring the display of one system onto another via an application called Sidecar. So what Sidecar does is it detects that you have another system probably on the same network, or it uses Bluetooth, so that you have to be in the same area or in the same house. If you go out, then you obviously cannot connect to your fixed Mac Mini. But if you want to just move around your house, try to do some work while not being in front of your Mac Mini, then Sidecar lets you access your Mac Mini desktop and provides you all the controls that you would actually have to do in front of a system. So Sidecar is something that I definitely wanted to try, but the iPad that I have is configured using a different ID, and obviously, if the IDs are different, then I would not be able to connect Sidecar. But just to show you, let me pull up the settings. So if I go here, Sidecar, this is Sidecar, and it's not showing any devices to connect because my user ID here is different from the iPad. But if I had it on the same user ID, it should come up here. And then what it helps me do is I can use the iPad, I can move around in the other room, and I could do all the operations via the iPad. It's more like a remote desktop connection that we use on Windows. So just that your iPad would be the monitor, and as well as it would take all the input and pass on those inputs to your Mac Mini or another Mac system. So that is a very good thing. If you already have an iPad and if you don't want to spend more money on a MacBook Air or MacBook Pro, then this could be an easy option. Although if you are going out or outside the house, then you obviously cannot carry your iPad and expect it to work with the Mac Mini. In those cases, you will have to leave your home without the Mac Mini. But as long as you are moving within the house, I think it should work pretty good. I haven't tried it out. I will try out once I'm able to sync the user IDs on both the devices. So all in all, the good things are definitely having an edge over the bad things. Now, out of all the bad things, I think the only problem I see is the Bluetooth, but I have managed to work around it. So it does come up occasionally, but I'm hoping that Apple soon releases a fix. I know that on one of the forums I was reading that Apple has acknowledged the issue. So hopefully, in the future updates of macOS Big Sur, we should see a fix for it. So that's it from my side. These are the top five good and five bad things I have experienced. Let me know if you have experienced anything different. There are many more good and bad things which are kind of not so critical or big enough to mention, but in a daily use scenario, you would encounter many more good things and many more issues or concerns. So let me know if there was anything you experienced which was different from what I have seen, or something that you think is definitely very good, or definitely is an issue for anyone else wanting to purchase the Mac. All right, so thanks for watching. Do subscribe to my channel.